Hi, I'm Willie. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. And what we're going to look at in this video is the Grandstream GWN7821P, which is this switch right here. So you have a total of 10 ports. You have 8 2.5 gigabit PoE++ ports, and then you have 2 SFP+ ports, as you can see there. And then you also have a console port, right? So you've got console, you got reset, you got your 2 SFP pluses, you got your 8 2.5 gigabit PoE++ ports. You can see I've got rack ears on this. It also comes with the feet that you can put on the bottom. On the back, we've got our power connector down here, or power plug. You got a grounding lug. You got a Kensington, or not a Kensington lock. This is a thing that pops in so you can strap the power cord in so it doesn't come unplugged. For some reason, I thought there was a Kensington lock on this, and maybe there's not. And then you also get a grounding cable with it. So we're going to take a look real quick at the data sheet on this. This switch, with all of its features, so fully managed layer 3 switch, can be managed from the cloud, can be managed on-prem, can be managed from one of the Grandstream routers, can be managed from GWN Manager on-prem. You've got so many management options that it's crazy. And you're not limited to what's in the manager, right? If you've got these things managed in the cloud or in GW Manager, you can actually log into these and make changes in the switches themselves. So you're not limited to just whatever the single pane of glass is giving you. And these things are super powerful. You got a street price right now about $299 US. But what we're going to do is we're going to hop over here to the data sheet, and we're going to take a look at this. So you get all of the awesome QoS that Grandstream is known for. You get those 8 PoE++ ports that can do 10 meg, 100 meg, gigabit, and 2.5 gigabit. And then you get the 2 SFP plus ports that can do up to 10 gig. Now, they do make another model of this, which is the GWN7822P, which is a 24 port switch, and it has 4 SFP plus ports. I don't have that switch yet. Now, you do have the option to control the PoE. Of course, this supports IP version 4, IP version 6. Stacking is coming to these switches, so if you don't know what stacking does, it takes multiple switches and allows you to configure them from one interface, which should also allow us to do things like having, if we're creating a link aggregation group, you know, where we have the bandwidth from multiple NICs, or even using it for redundancy, we should be able to do lags across switches, which is fantastic. Here they talk about the management options. So you've got the embedded controller, you've got GDMS, you've got GWN Manager, any of the routers, whether it's the GCC Convergence series, whether it's a GWN router, they can also manage these switches. Of course, you have ACLs. We've talked about ACLs. They work, the premise, they're the same premise as firewall rules, but you use an inverted mask and things, and you can really lock yourself out if you're not careful with those. If you're interested in a video on ACLs, let me know down below. This thing supports tons of network protocols. You can see those here. I'll leave a link to this data sheet down below. It comes with 256 megs of RAM, 8 megs of flash, of NOR flash, and 128 megs of NAND flash. Supports jumbo frames up to 10,240 bytes. PoE standards are 802.3 AF, AT, and BT. We already talked about how many ports it has. Now, it is worth noting that to support a DAC cable, that the cable must be equal to or less than 5 meters, which is about 15 feet. What else? You can do 5 lags. The switch that I have has a 280 watt power supply. Total PoE output can be 240 watts. with a maximum of 60 watts out per port. You can see we've got surge protection built in. We do have the reset pinhole. We also have the management port. Total non-blocking throughput for this switch with the 8 ports and the 2 10 gigabit ports appears to be 40 gigabits with a total switching capability of 80 gigabits, a forwarding rate of 59.52 million packets per second. It's got a 12 meg packet buffer. Stacking, when the stacking comes out in the firmware, you are going to be able to stack up to 4 of these switches in a stack. Supports 16,000 MAC addresses, 4,000 VLANs. Private VLAN is coming. What else do we have here? Of course, we support spanning tree, whether it's STP, RTSP, MSTP, or PVST, PVST+. Supports all the multicast things. Of course, QoS and ACLs. Does have an onboard DHCP server if you need it. So I'll leave this, a link to this down below, but what we're going to do right now is we're going to get logged into the switch and we're going to take a look around. All right, so here we are at our switch login. As you know, Grandstream has a random password for every device. They are meeting those requirements. It comes on the back on a sticker, and they also ship you another sticker that has that password. So we're going to go ahead and log in here. If I can type the password correctly. All right, so we are on, I believe, the latest firmware, which is 1.0.13.6 as of the filming of this video. So here we get this really nice, I'm going to click save just because I can. Here we get this really nice system info, a really nice resource status that's in real time. Here we can see our PoE status, how much remaining power we have. We can see our fans here, whether they're running, whether they're stopped, if they are running, what speed are they running at. We have our system events over here, time, date. Management VLAN by default is, sorry, that was, I gotta put my phone on do not disturb. So by default, the management VLAN is VLAN 1. You can see we grabbed this IP version 4 address 66.165. Here's our part number, serial number, all these good things. Now we can change the device name. I'm going to leave it at default. If we flip on over to the port info, we can click on the ports and it will tell us what's going on with that port. So right now my uplink is port 2. You can see that it is connected at a gigabit. And you can see that my neighbor is a US Pro Max 24 PoE. I must not have it plugged into a 2.5 gig port, and that's okay. This port does support jumbo frames. Let's see. You get all of your statistics over here. And then if we were using PoE on that, we would see that information here. So we're going to go to switching and we're going to look at port basics. This is going to be an overview of the basic settings, and we can edit each individual port. We can edit only ports of the same type. I got to get rid of the SFP plus ports there. So I can edit all of the copper ports at one time to change. I don't know why right now I would change duplex mode, but I could change the jumbo frame. I could mess with the flow control, the speed, disable the ports, add descriptions, things like that. Can do that all in one file swoop. You can create port groups to be able to manipulate ports as a group. Here's our port statistics here, and the interval by default is a 10-second refresh. We can change that to 30 or 60. Loopback detection is supported in the switch. By default, it is turned off. Port auto recovery. So what is port auto recovery? Well, if you have errors on a port, if you have port security, where we tell a switch port, here are the MAC addresses that you're expecting, whether it's one or many. If any other MAC address shows up on this port, disable the port. So you can set it that if you error down a port through port security, that it can auto recover. Here's our link aggregation groups, and you can see we can do up to 5 of those. And we can come in and edit that. Got a MAC address table here. Of course, it's going to see a lot of things from the switch that it's plugged into. You can add static MAC addresses. You can black hole MAC addresses. And here's that port security address. So if we had that set up, you would see that in here. And if you want to see a port security video, let me know and we'll do that. Here's our VLAN settings. By default, you've got VLAN 1 and is untagged on all the ports. So we can add a VLAN here. We can add VLAN 2. And by default, we're not doing anything with it here. You can come over here. You can change your port from a trunk to a hybrid, an access, or a Q&Q. So people wanted to know if these switches support Q&Q, and there it is. Proof is in the pudding. Port members, this will show us all of our allowed VLANs, tagged VLANs, the PVID. We can set our voice VLAN. We can do it auto, tagged, or untagged by the OUIs. Here's the default OUIs. These are going to be your most popular phones that we see. Yealink should probably be in there, but I understand sometimes why vendors do that. Here's MAC-based VLANs, and we can also do protocol-based VLANs. This is a little bit, MAC and protocol is a little bit more advanced than what most people are probably running in their small networks, but if you want to see more on that, let me know. So here's our VLAN. We can come in here, member type, all ports. So what we could do is we could hit tagged all. We can come down here and we can click on this and change it. U is going to be untagged. Nothing there. The VLAN is going to be exempted from that port. So we'll click OK and save. And now you can see that VLAN 2 is allowed tagged on all of those ports. Here's our spanning tree setup. So you can change it for each of the ports. We can mess with the instances, all those good things. Here we can change the mode from, it's by default RSTP. We can just go to STP, MSTP, PVST. I should probably do some more spanning tree videos so that people can ask questions, and if they need a bit more familiarity with it, we can go through that. If we are going to do layer 3 switching, if we're going to do routing with this, we can come in here and we can add IP addresses on those VLANs. So I could do VLAN 2 and I could set this as 192.160.168.2.1, and we can do subnet mask 255.255.255.0. I can change that MTU. But now if I had a route in my 66 network pointing towards this switch, this could be active and it could be routing. It also supports IP version 6. And then this is where we can change the management VLAN. So it doesn't have to be VLAN 1. It can be any of the other VLANs that you want. You can have DHCP or static IPs with that. Here's our DHCP server. If you need to use that, you can turn it on. You can add settings to the pool. It does support some DHCP options. DHCP relay. If you are pulling your DHCP addresses from a DHCP server that's not in the same network or same VLAN, you can add that here, and the switch will then make sure that DHCP broadcasts or requests get sent to the proper DHCP server. Here's our ARP table, neighbor discovery. So this is going to be like LLDP. I think that's what this one is for. Oh, this is router neighbor discovery here, not LLDP. We've got DNS in here. So you can come in here and add domain names, override those A records. Full multicast support, which is so important when you're doing large voice deployments or you're wanting to do things like streaming audio and streaming video over the network. And the Grandstream hardware supports every bit of multicast that you need to do that. You got your MLD snooping here as well. Then under routing, we can see all the routes in our route table. For IP version 4, there's IP version 6. We can come in, we can add static routes here. Now, these are the next section. These are all dynamic protocols. So it supports RIP, RIP-NG, OSPF, OSPF version 3, and BGP. Right in the switch. $299 switch with 2.5 gig ports, SFP plus ports, PoE supports BGP. It's fantastic. Here's our routing policies that we can set up. All right, here's our PoE, so we can come in here and we can reboot PoE, the power on switches. Here's how much PoE is reserved. That's to probably run the system, if I had to guess. Maybe. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong on that. And then on the interfaces, we can come in here and we can actually edit the PoE standard that port is allowed to use. So if you didn't want somebody plugging a BT device in, you could come into a port and change the standards. In power mode, auto, shutdown, or force. We've got power limit mode by user or class. You can come in here and set up a schedule to power things completely off. So if you've got access points and you don't want them to just stop broadcasting the SSIDs, or you've got, let's say you're running a PoE display or something, you can come in here and set a schedule to actually shut that device, shut the power off to that device. Full support for QoS, all the QoS you can eat. I need to do some videos on QoS. We are using auto QoS with the Grandstream switches at a very respectable deployment of voice over IP for a village, and it works beautifully, absolutely beautifully. And they had just added that on the switches that we're using in a recent firmware, and it was the first time we deployed it, and it worked perfectly. Under security, we can see storm control here. Right now it's disabled on the ports. Here's that port security. So if you're interested in a kind of an in-depth on this, let me know. Port isolation is available. I'm trying to remember if it said that in the data sheet. I thought maybe that was coming soon, but it looks like port isolation is here. Here's our ACLs, and you can do ACLs by IP. You can do it by MAC, VLAN, and you can do rate limiting as well with that. IP source guard setup, IPv6 source guard setup. Here's your anti-attack settings. You can come in here and turn these on. The DIA setup. If you want to see in-depth on some of these, let me know. Radius server, which we're going to get into. And then you've got your AAA and your attack ACS plus here. Under maintenance, we can come in here, we can upgrade the firmware manually. We can push it from a URL or a TFTP server or an FTP server. And then you can also do scheduled upgrades. So you could set your switches to do automatic scheduled upgrades at like 10 o'clock on a Friday night. Diagnostics, you can see we've got logs here. We can ping either FQDNs or IPs. Here's a ping watchdog. So if you set this up and you're pinging something and the pings drop, you can set it to reboot a port. Traceroute, port mirroring, fiber module testing. I don't have any fiber modules in at the moment. Copper test. One-click debugging. Perform one-click debugging on the device to collect debugging information. Management platform connection diagnostics. So if we had this adopted to a controller, whether it's a router, GWN manager, or GDMS, we would get our connection diagnostic information here. Usually it tells you green, everything is good. We can back up and restore our configurations here. Full support for SNMP version 1, 2, and 3. So we can come in here and set all of those things up. Armon is included, But to use it, you must enable SNMP. Here's the LLDP setup. So it is turned on by default. LLDP media. So this is for our phones or any other devices where we need to recognize that device and configure the VLANs automatically appropriately. So here's that neighbor information. Here's our statistics. Energy efficient Ethernet is disabled. I know a lot of people include that. Sometimes it causes problems with access points or devices connecting to access points. So a lot of times we will disable this. Here's our alerting setup. And then under system, under our basic settings, we can change the time zone, which I'll have to get that updated. We can enable daylight savings time. We can change the name, the location, and this is all, you can pull this all via SNMP if you're doing that. You can also do automatic scheduled reboots. Access control, we can come in, change the ports for the web UI. We can disable SSH, change the port on that. Here we can do this, it looks like right from the web browser. Let's see what happens here. It's enabled. So that must be what that was. I was really hoping it would load it right there in the browser. Here's our management server settings. So wherever we want to manage this, adding this device to GDMS is a little different. You go into GDMS, you put in the serial number and the MAC address, and you can adopt it that way. And then management ACL of hardware, management ACL for software. Here's our user management, so we can have multiple users instead of everybody logging in as admin. We've got our time policies here. And then we have 1588 V2 TC, which is currently in beta. So you're going to see me using this switch quite a bit in upcoming videos. We're going to do a lot of dynamic routing videos this year. Maybe not a lot, maybe like 2 or 3, but this switch is going to be integral to that because we're going to mix and match it with other vendors' routers that can do BGP or RIP or OSPF. So that is coming very soon. So if you got any questions about this switch, let me know. Like I said, you can pick this switch up for a street price of $299 US, and you get all of this functionality. Can be managed locally in the cloud, on a local controller, by a router. And you're not just limited to what the controller gives you. You can still log into this switch and make configuration changes if there's not something available in the UI. I'm excited about this. There's more coming about this very, very soon. If you've got questions about this switch, let me know. I'm also thinking about putting a lot of my switches, Cisco, Juniper, Grandstream, I'm thinking about making them, the lab, publicly available. Is that something that you'd be interested in? If you could get access to a stack of gear to poke around, let me know down below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and share. Follow me on Twitter and TikTok. Those links are down below, along with affiliate links, a Patreon link. And if you need IT consulting, you want to rebuild your network, you want to add voice, you just want somebody to check on your network, you need storage, you need security audits, you need security in the first place, head on over to williehowe.com, fill out the contact form, and someone will be in touch with you as soon as possible. We do residential and business consultations. Also, if you'd like to talk about this and other technology, head on over to community.williehowe.com, sign up for our forum, and join the conversation today. Once again, I'm Willie. I want to thank you for being here, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.